Wasn't long ago, Michelle Alexander, one of the country's foremost intellectuals and author of The New Jim Crow, said, "I can't believe Hillary Clinton would be coasting into the primaries with her current margin of black support if most people knew how much damage the Clintons have done." A month later, she outlined policies that Bill Clinton enacted and that Hillary Clinton supported in a scathing essay in The Nation titled "Why Hillary Clinton Doesn't Deserve the Black Vote." That was back in February. Since then, she's not given a television interview to talk about her piece. Today, after joining actress Rosario Dawson in Harlem for a Bernie Sanders event, Michelle Alexander joined me to talk about the campaign, criminal justice, race, and the Democratic Party. I started off by asking if she is endorsing Bernie Sanders.
I am definitely endorsing the political revolution. I am reluctant to endorse any candidate, any Democratic candidate, any candidate in the current political system. I believe that we need to think very seriously, particularly as folks of color and progressives, about building either a new party or a new movement that can hold the Democratic Party accountable or provide a meaningful alternative. But I could not be more thrilled with the movement that is arising all over this country to support the creation of a real democracy in the United States. I think Bernie Sanders is absolutely right to call for a political revolution. We don't have a real democracy. Today, our politicians are, pretending to serve two masters, the people who elect them and then the people who fund them. And unfortunately, for millions of people who cast their votes every year, they rightfully wonder whether their politicians are responding more to the people who fund their campaigns, including large pharmaceutical companies, big banks, payday lenders, private prison companies, than the people who have elected them.
One of the biggest critiques of Bernie Sanders' shortcomings is the fact that he has had a hard time building a multiracial coalition, that his supporters have been overwhelmingly white, that his voting performance has been disproportionately white. I mean, that seems a pretty major obstacle if you want to do that.
Well, that is certainly the critique, although, his recent landslide victories in Hawaii and Washington State, states that are, Hawaii, I think, is the most diverse state in the nation, and there have been great gains for Bernie Sanders among voters of color. I think many voters of color had never heard of Bernie Sanders. I had never heard of Bernie Sanders before the presidential election campaign. And, the reality is that the Clintons are very well known to black folks in particular. And, one of the reasons why I wrote my piece for The Nation is that although, one side of the Clinton story is well known to black folks, the fact that, Bill Clinton was really the first president that ever really embraced black people as human beings. I think it's important when people, talk about, lots of folks ask me, particularly white folks, ask me, why do so many black folks support Clinton when he, his policies were so disastrous for the African American community? And I think many people forget that, we had centuries of slavery where no politician was responsive to our humanity at all, followed by Jim Crow segregation. And, although Lyndon B. Johnson and Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy were allies in some respects, though not all respects, with the civil rights movement and African American communities, there had never been a president or a presidential candidate who actually treated black folks like they were real people who could be viewed and treated as human beings, who weren't a problem to be solved, that didn't treat African Americans as a problem to be solved, but instead would actually sit down and eat with them and sing in their church and acted like they recognized us as human beings. And that's a huge thing. Just as the election of Barack Obama as the first black president was a huge thing for African Americans as a community, it was no small thing for Bill Clinton to reach out to African American communities in the way that he did. And I think many people remember that, especially older African Americans remember that. What they don't know what they often don't know or don't remember, and is actually one of the reasons why I wrote my book, The New Jim Crow, in the first place, is that many people of color don't know or fully understand how this system of mass incarceration was constructed, why, and the devastating consequences for our communities. And the Clintons, had an important role. They escalated the drug war and the Get Tough movement far beyond what the Republicans had done, while at the same time dismantling the federal social safety net and transferring billions of dollars away from child welfare and housing into a prison building boom unlike anything the world had ever seen. And really, the election of Bill Clinton marked the turning point for the Democratic Party, where the Democratic Party decided that in order to win over those so-called white swing voters, the folks who had defected from the Democratic Party in the wake of the Civil Rights Movement, in order to get those folks, they were going to have to begin proving to that segment that they could be tougher on them than the Republicans had been. And, I think that's a part of our political history that is painful, I think, for the Black community to face, but it's necessary.
You can watch my entire interview with Michelle Alexander on our website.